Maya stood by the window, the warm afternoon sun streaming into her modest neighborhood in Denver, Colorado. It had been 3 months since her family moved here, but everything still felt unfamiliar. 3 months, long enough to notice the changes, not just in the scenery or the air, but in how they felt about life. The neighbors had started to warm up to them. The kids found new playmates, and Maya and James, a young couple with big dreams, were slowly carving out a place for themselves. Did we make the right choice moving here, James? Maya asked, her voice soft, her eyes searching his for reassurance. James, wearing his familiar, comforting smile, nodded. Of course, honey. We've been through so much already. This is our chance to start fresh. Denver was supposed to be their sanctuary, the place where they could rewrite their story. Their children, Eli and Leah, had quickly adapted to their new school and made friends. Despite their busy schedules, Maya and James made it a point to spend time as a family, cherishing those precious moments together. Tonight, they had decided to celebrate an important milestone by visiting a well-known local restaurant. The Pines, nestled on a quiet street, was praised for its cozy ambiance, rustic wooden tables, and soft golden lighting. It was a favorite among locals, known for its delicious food and welcoming atmosphere. Maya and James had heard countless good things about it and thought this would be the perfect occasion to reconnect. When they stepped into the Pines, the warm, inviting atmosphere enveloped them. Laughter mingled with the clinking of dishes, and the mouth-watering aroma of food filled the air. The dining area was beautifully arranged, the light from the soft golden lamps reflecting off walls adorned with serene nature paintings. As Maya's family approached the reception desk, a young waiter, probably in his early 20s, glanced up. His expression momentarily flickered with surprise before he quickly composed himself, his demeanor professional but lacking warmth. "Good evening," he said, his tone detached. "Do you have a reservation?" Maya and James exchanged a quick glance. They hadn't anticipated needing one, especially since the dining room had several empty tables. "No, we don't," Maya replied, her voice calm. "But there seem to be open seats. Could we wait for a table?" The waiter, whose name tag read Luke, hesitated, his eyes briefly darting toward the empty tables. Then his tone grew more clipped. "I'm sorry, but all our tables are reserved. We're fully booked tonight." Maya's brow furrowed as she glanced back into the dining room. The sight of numerous unoccupied tables only deepened her confusion. A faint unease crept into her chest, a feeling she couldn't quite shake. "Are you sure?" she pressed gently. "It looks like there's plenty of space." Luke's demeanor turned colder. "I'm sure," he said curtly. "This restaurant has strict policies. We can't accommodate walk-ins." The weight of unspoken words hung heavily in the air. Maya's stomach churned. This wasn't the first time she had felt this quiet exclusion, but the sting of it always caught her off guard. James noticed her hesitation and lightly touched her hand. "Maya, let's go," he said, his voice steady but firm, masking his own simmering anger. As they turned to leave, the quiet murmur of the restaurant seemed louder than before. Maya felt the curious stares of other patrons following them, their silence complicit and suffocating. Once outside, the brisk evening air hit them like a wall. Maya looked up at the darkening sky, her heart heavy with frustration and hurt. "We're not past this, are we?" she whispered, her voice laced with bitterness. James exhaled slowly, his grip tightening on her hand. "No," he admitted after a moment, "but we will be. This isn't the end, Maya. It's just another hurdle." As they walked away from the Pines, the cold wind seemed to echo the emptiness in their hearts. Maya stopped abruptly, shaking her head as if trying to clear the weight pressing down on her. "We weren't turned away because there were no tables," she said softly, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and sadness. "We were turned away because we don't belong here." James turned to her, his expression resolute. "No, Maya, that's what they want us to think, but we do belong, and we're not letting anyone push us out." His determination sparked something in her, a faint flicker of hope. She nodded, her voice steadier now. "You're right, we've come too far to let this define us." James smiled faintly, squeezing her hand. "This is just the beginning. We'll prove them wrong, together." As they continued walking into the Denver night, the chill in the air felt a little less biting. Maya and James walked home in silence, their footsteps heavy with disappointment. The quiet wasn't unusual. It was the kind of silence they had grown used to over the years, one that carried the weight of too many unspoken feelings. But this time, the silence wasn't just about sadness. It was about reflection, frustration, and a yearning for something more. When they entered their modest home, the familiar sound of Eli's laughter and Leah's playful chatter greeted them. Maya paused in the doorway for a moment, her lips curving into a faint smile. It was a bittersweet reminder of what truly mattered. James gave her a gentle squeeze on the shoulder before stepping into the kitchen, but Maya sank onto the living room sofa, her gaze fixed on the television. The screen flickered with bright colors, but she wasn't watching. All she could hear was Luke's cold, indifferent voice at the restaurant. Cannot serve. It wasn't just about being refused a table. It was about the unspoken judgment, the exclusion that lingered like an open wound. James joined her a few minutes later, settling onto the sofa beside her. For a moment, neither spoke. The weight of their shared pain pressed down on them, but it wasn't long before James broke the silence. Maya, we can't just sit here, he said, his voice low but steady. We have to do something. She turned to him, her brow furrowing. Do what, James? How do we fight this? When will we ever truly belong? Her voice wavered, betraying her exhaustion. James took her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. His eyes burned with a determination she hadn't seen in a long time. No one's going to give us a place in this world, Maya. If we want change, we have to make it ourselves. We've been through worse, haven't we? That's why we can do this. It's time we stop waiting and start acting. Maya tilted her head, studying him. What do you mean? She asked cautiously, unsure where his sudden conviction was leading. He straightened in his seat, his expression resolute. We're going to open a restaurant. Maya blinked, her eyes widening. A restaurant? Yes, James said firmly. But not just any restaurant. This will be a place where everyone is welcome. No reservations needed, no judgment, no discrimination. A place where no one is turned away for who they are. The idea hung in the air between them, its boldness both daunting and electrifying. Maya hesitated, her thoughts racing. James, do you really think we can pull this off? He smiled softly, squeezing her hand. We've faced bigger battles, haven't we? This is just another challenge, and this time we'll win. Maya looked down at their joined hands. The uncertainty she had felt earlier began to give way to something stronger, a glimmer of hope. She stood up suddenly, as if propelled by a newfound energy. We're going to do this, she said, her voice steady, her eyes bright with determination. James rose to his feet, his smile widening. Then it's settled. Starting today, we're rewriting our story, together. They didn't know what the future would hold, but one thing was clear. They wouldn't let discrimination define their fate. From that moment on, the journey to change had begun. Maya and James spent weeks meticulously planning their dream restaurant. But as they started exploring real opportunities, the enormity of the task hit them hard. They researched potential locations in Denver, calculated costs, and reviewed the necessary requirements for opening a restaurant. Every step revealed more obstacles: finances, space, staffing, marketing. It all seemed overwhelming. Despite the challenges, Maya refused to lose faith. She knew the path wouldn't be easy, but she also understood that without taking a first step, their dream would never materialize. One morning, as they sat together browsing restaurant listings online, something caught Maya's eye. The Pines, famous downtown restaurant, seeks buyer. Maya paused, her heart skipping a beat as if she'd just unearthed a treasure. James, look at this, she said, pointing at the screen. This could be the opportunity we've been waiting for. The Pines is up for sale because of financial trouble. James leaned closer, his expression a mix of surprise and skepticism. The Pines? Isn't that the same restaurant where we were turned away? He raised an eyebrow, letting out a dry chuckle. Do you really think we should buy that place? Maya didn't respond immediately. Instead, she sat silently for a moment, the idea swirling in her mind. Then she turned to James, her eyes filled with determination. Yes, that's the place. If we buy it, we can turn it into a restaurant where no one is ever turned away because of who they are. This is our chance, not just to rebuild our lives, but to create something meaningful for this community. James studied her face for a moment, his doubt melting into understanding. Finally, he nodded. I see your point, Maya. If we can transform that place, it won't just be a restaurant. It'll stand for something bigger, something that shows people like us don't have to accept things as they are. We can create change. Determined to act, Maya and James contacted the owner of the Pines and arranged a meeting that weekend. As they walked into the restaurant, they took in the spacious dining area with its neatly arranged wooden tables and warm golden lighting. But the once vibrant atmosphere was eerily still. Empty tables filled the room, their silence a stark reminder of the restaurant's struggles. The owner, a middle aged man named Michael, greeted them with a weary smile. His eyes carried the weight of years of stress and disappointment. After brief introductions, he shared the restaurant's grim story: financial troubles, bad business decisions, and the devastating impact of the pandemic had all but destroyed his once thriving business. Maya and James listened intently, but in their hearts, they had already made up their minds. Michael sighed, his voice heavy. "This place has been here for over 15 years, but I can't keep it going anymore. I hate to see it close, but I have no choice but to sell." Maya looked at him, her resolve evident. "We want to buy the Pines. We'll turn it into a restaurant that not only serves great food, but also represents inclusion and respect for everyone who walks through the door." James chimed in, his tone calm but confident. "Michael, we don't just want to buy your restaurant. We want to restore its value and give it a fresh start. This place has potential, not just as a business, but as a symbol of change." Michael studied them carefully, his expression thoughtful. After a long pause, he nodded slowly. "I'm not sure what the future holds, but if anyone can give this place a second chance, maybe it's you." When news broke that Maya and James had purchased the Pines, it spread quickly among the restaurant's former staff. Luke, the waiter who had turned Maya's family away, was especially shocked. The memory of that day lingered in his mind, and he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling of how his actions might now come back to haunt him. On their first day as owners, Maya and James walked through the restaurant, taking note of the renovations it desperately needed. Maya stood in the middle of the dining room, her eyes scanning the space with a look of determination. Luke, spotting them from across the room, hesitated. His palms grew clammy as guilt gnawed at him. He remembered his cold dismissal of them and couldn't help but wonder if they'd hold it against him. Maya noticed him standing there and approached, her expression calm but firm. "Hello, Luke," she said, her voice kind yet steady. "We want you to be part of our team, but if you're going to work here, you'll need to embrace our values: respect and inclusion." Luke froze, her words hitting him harder than he expected. He felt the weight of his past actions and realized this was a turning point, not just for the restaurant, but for himself. As the day ended, Maya and James stood outside the Pines, gazing at the restaurant's brightly lit windows. The road ahead was uncertain, and the changes they envisioned would take time. But one thing was clear: they were ready to transform not just a restaurant, but a community. "We're going to make this work," Maya said, her voice filled with confidence. James placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder and smiled. "We're not just fixing a restaurant, Maya. We're building something that matters." Maya and James wasted no time beginning renovations on the Pines. They wanted the restaurant to reflect not just a new look, but the values of inclusion and change they hoped to inspire. This wasn't just about physical transformation, it was about creating a space where everyone could feel they belonged. When Maya stepped into the restaurant for the first time as its owner, she paused in the doorway, taking in the heavy stillness of the room. The old wooden tables, the gray walls dulled with age, and the dim lighting created an atmosphere that felt lifeless. She ran her fingers across the scarred surface of a table, its scratches and worn edges echoing the restaurant's decline. "This place needs more than a facelift," she said, turning to James with determination. "It needs a whole new soul." James glanced around, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "We need to brighten it up, make it warm, open, and welcoming, a place that feels alive." They dove into planning, replacing the heavy wooden furniture with modern tables that retained a rustic charm. The walls were repainted in hues of amber and cream, bringing a sense of light and openness to the space. Maya selected artwork from local artists that celebrated cultural diversity: vivid landscapes, portraits, and abstract pieces that reflected the stories of people from all walks of life. When the renovations were complete, the restaurant no longer felt like a relic of the past. It was vibrant, inviting, and filled with the energy of new beginnings. The next step was to craft a menu that aligned with their vision. Maya and James wanted it to be more than delicious. They wanted it to tell a story. They envisioned a fusion of cuisines, blending traditional American dishes with bold flavors from Asia, Europe, and beyond. James spent countless hours experimenting in the kitchen, perfecting recipes that would surprise and delight. One evening, Maya walked in to find him leaning over a pot of stew, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Taste this," he said, handing her a spoon. She took a sip, her eyes lighting up. "This is amazing. What is it?" "An old family recipe," he said with a smile, "with a twist." Together, they finalized the menu, each dish a celebration of culinary diversity and creativity. Maya also took the lead in recruiting chefs who shared their passion for food and inclusivity, ensuring that their kitchen would be a place of respect and collaboration. Renovating the physical space was only part of the journey. Maya and James knew that creating a welcoming environment also meant fostering a strong team culture. They hosted training sessions, not just to teach processes, but to share their vision of respect, fairness, and inclusion. "We're not just serving food here," Maya told the staff during their first meeting. "We're serving a mission. This is a place where everyone, customers and employees alike, should feel they belong." Among the staff was Luke, the former waiter who had turned Maya's family away. At first, he felt out of place in this new atmosphere. But as he listened to Maya and James speak, he realized how much this opportunity meant to him. Slowly, he began to change, not just as an employee, but as a person. One evening, after a long day of training, Luke approached Maya hesitantly. "Mrs. Carter," he began, his voice unsure, "I just wanted to say thank you for giving me another chance." Maya smiled warmly. "It's not just about a second chance, Luke. It's about growing together. I'm glad you're here." As the grand opening approached, Maya and James worked tirelessly to spread the word. They reached out to local food bloggers, journalists, and community leaders, inviting them to witness the transformation of the Pines. "This isn't just a restaurant reopening, Carlos," Maya said during one interview. "It's a new beginning for the restaurant, for us, and for the community." They planned events that would bring people together, cultural exchange nights, community talks, and live music performances. They wanted the Pines to be more than a place to eat. It would be a hub for connection, celebration, and change. On the eve of the grand opening, Maya stood in the center of the restaurant, now glowing with warmth and life. The soft hum of conversations and the scent of freshly prepared dishes filled the air as the staff made final preparations. James joined her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We did it," he said, his voice full of pride. Maya nodded, her eyes glistening with emotion. "We're ready. Whatever happens tomorrow, we've come this far." As they gazed out at the brightly lit sign of the Pines, they knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time, they felt ready to face it together. The long-anticipated opening day of the Pines had finally arrived. Early in the morning, the atmosphere buzzed with nervous excitement. Every detail had been meticulously prepared. The tables were adorned with crisp white linens. The golden glow of the pendant lights reflected the hope in Maya and James' eyes, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and baked bread lingered in the air. This was more than just a grand opening. For Maya and James, it was a statement, a symbol of change and inclusion, not just for the restaurant, but for the entire community. Maya stood near the entrance, her gaze sweeping across the transformed space. The once dark walls now radiated warmth, adorned with vibrant paintings celebrating cultural diversity. Each corner of the restaurant told a story of unity and belonging. "Do you think everything will be okay?" she asked James, her voice soft but tinged with worry. James smiled, his hand brushing hers reassuringly. "We've done everything we could, Maya. This isn't just about the food. It's about making people feel welcome." As the clock struck 10, the doors opened and the first curious customers began trickling in. Whispers and murmurs filled the air as they took in the changes. Maya and James greeted each guest with warm smiles, their voices steady despite the nervous flutter in their chests. "Welcome to the new Pines," Maya said to an elderly couple, their curious eyes lingering on the artwork. "We're so glad you could join us." At one table, a group of friends admired the vibrant painting of a bustling market. "It's beautiful," one of them said. "You can feel the energy." Nearby, two strangers shared laughter over a plate of fusion appetizers, their conversation weaving seamlessly with the hum of the restaurant. Despite the welcoming atmosphere, a faint tension lingered. Would the community embrace their vision? Maya and James could only hope that their efforts would resonate. As the restaurant filled, Luke stepped through the doors, his heart pounding. The once familiar space felt foreign, brighter, livelier, and filled with an energy he couldn't ignore. He hesitated near the entrance, his guilt from that fateful day weighing heavily on him. Maya noticed him and approached with a warm smile, her expression free of resentment. "Hello, Luke. I'm glad you're here," she said gently. "This place is about more than just serving food now. It's about second chances for everyone." Luke swallowed hard, his throat dry. "Maya, I—" He paused, his voice trembling. "I'm sorry for how I treated you and your family that day. I didn't think, I didn't realize how wrong I was." Maya nodded, her gaze steady and kind. "What matters is that you're here now, willing to grow. That's what this place is about, growth and inclusion. If you're ready to embrace that, we're happy to have you." Luke felt the weight of her words, his guilt replaced by a flicker of hope. "Thank you," he said, his voice firm despite the emotion in his eyes. "I won't let you down." After the grand opening, the Pines found its rhythm. New customers arrived daily, drawn to the restaurant's reputation as a welcoming space. Maya and James noticed the warmth that now filled the restaurant, not just between the customers, but in the way their staff interacted. They felt a quiet pride in what they had built, a place where diversity wasn't just accepted, but celebrated. For Luke, however, the changes weren't as easy to embrace. While Maya and James had welcomed him without hesitation, he still felt like an outsider in the new environment. Every cheerful conversation he overheard, every friendly smile exchanged between customers, reminded him of his coldness on that fateful day. Yet, as the weeks passed, Luke began to observe how Maya and James lived out the principles they preached. Their respect for everyone, customers, employees, and even each other, wasn't just talk. It was tangible, woven into the very fabric of the restaurant's culture. Slowly, Luke began to question his own perspective. One quiet afternoon, when the restaurant was empty, Maya found Luke in the kitchen, staring absently out the window. She sat down across from him, her expression calm and inviting. "How are you feeling, Luke?" she asked gently. "I wanted to check in with you." Luke hesitated, avoiding her gaze. "I don't know," he admitted. "I feel like I don't belong here yet, like I don't deserve it after everything I've done." Maya leaned forward, her eyes soft but steady. "Luke, change isn't about erasing the past, it's about learning from it. You've already taken the hardest step by acknowledging what needs to change. The rest is a process, not a race." Luke met her eyes, his voice trembling. But what if I mess up again? What if I can't be the kind of person this place deserves?" Maya smiled. "You don't have to be perfect, Luke. None of us are. Just start small. Look at the people who walk through those doors, not just as customers, but as individuals with their own stories. If you open your heart to them, everything else will follow." Her words lingered in Luke's mind long after their conversation ended. In the weeks that followed, Luke began to take Maya's advice to heart. When greeting customers, he looked them in the eye, trying to understand who they were beyond their orders. He noticed the way a tired mother relaxed when her child smiled at a friendly waiter, or how an elderly man lit up when someone remembered his favorite dish. These small moments changed the way Luke approached his work. He no longer saw his role as just a job, it was a chance to make people feel seen and valued. His relationships with his colleagues also began to shift. Previously, Luke had kept to himself, seeing work as a means to an end, but now he joined in on conversations during breaks and helped his teammates without being asked. Slowly, he started to feel like part of the Pines family. One morning, while washing dishes after a shift, Luke glanced out the window. He saw Maya and James chatting with a group of customers, their laughter blending with the soft hum of the restaurant. For the first time, Luke felt a sense of peace. He realized that the Pines wasn't just a workplace, it was a home. One evening, as the restaurant quieted after a busy day, Luke approached Maya and James. His hands trembled slightly, but his eyes were steady. "Maya, James," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "I just want to say thank you for giving me a second chance, for believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself. I know I've made mistakes, but I want to do better. I want to truly be a part of this team, not just for a paycheck, but for what this place stands for." Maya's eyes glistened as she smiled. "Luke, it's never too late to change. What matters is that you're trying, and that you're doing it for the right reasons." James nodded, placing a reassuring hand on Luke's shoulder. "We've seen the difference already, Luke. You're not the same person you were, and that's something to be proud of. Keep going. We're here to support you." Luke felt a warmth he hadn't known in years. He wasn't just an employee anymore. He was part of something larger than himself. As the evening wore on, the restaurant returned to its peaceful rhythm. Maya and James stood near the entrance, watching Luke greet a new table with an easy smile. "We've come a long way," Maya said softly, glancing at James. "And there's still so much to do. But seeing Luke like this, it makes it all worth it." James squeezed her hand. "He's just one story, Maya. There will be more. What we're building here, it's only the beginning." They stood together in the golden glow of the evening light, feeling the quiet power of the changes they had set in motion. The restaurant was more than just a space. It was a symbol of growth, inclusion, and hope. One late afternoon, Maya and James stood in the quieting space of the Pines. The once empty tables and dim lighting were now replaced by a lively hum of conversation and the warm glow of pendant lights. The restaurant had become a beloved destination, not just for its delicious food, but for the atmosphere of inclusion, respect, and fairness they had worked so hard to create. Customers came not only to eat, but to connect, to feel part of a larger community. Conversations stretched beyond food, delving into stories of resilience and change, as people shared their lives and found common ground. Luke, once a symbol of alienation and prejudice, now worked with a quiet confidence that reflected his transformation. He wasn't just a waiter anymore. He was an essential part of Maya and James's vision. His respect for customers and colleagues came from a deep understanding of the restaurant's mission, a place that stood for inclusion and equality. In the kitchen, Maya and James observed the bustling dining room through the large windows. Customers chatted happily, clinking glasses and sharing plates of food that told stories of cultural fusion. A sense of pride filled the air as they watched their dream in motion. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Maya asked, her voice soft but reflective. James turned to her, his smile broad and genuine. "Not just right, Maya. We created a place where everyone feels like they belong. No race, no class, just people, sharing respect and love." Maya nodded, a spark of joy lighting her eyes. "It's what we always wanted, isn't it? A place where differences bring people together, not push them apart." Across the dining room, a wealthy guest leaned toward a working-class neighbor, laughing as they exchanged stories over steaming plates of food. At another table, a group of young people from different cultural backgrounds animatedly discussed the unique spices in their dishes. This was more than a restaurant. It was an educational space for inclusion and connection. The restaurant's success extended far beyond its walls. Maya and James realized that the Pines had become a platform for social change, inspiring the community to embrace diversity. No longer strangers, people of different backgrounds began seeing each other as friends and allies. Determined to deepen this impact, Maya organized regular events at the restaurant to foster understanding and connection. From cultural nights to expert-led talks on inclusion and equity, these gatherings became a cornerstone of the restaurant's identity. One particularly memorable event was Empathy Night, where guests were invited to share personal stories of the challenges they had overcome. That evening, the restaurant was transformed into a haven of vulnerability and connection. A young man took the microphone, his voice unsteady. "I used to think my struggles were mine alone," he said, glancing around the room. "But hearing your stories tonight reminds me that we're all stronger when we stand together." The room erupted in applause, tears glistening in many eyes. For Maya and James, this was the heart of their mission, creating a space where humanity and respect could thrive. Despite the restaurant's growing success, Maya and James knew the road ahead wouldn't be without obstacles. There were slower days when the dining room wasn't as full, and moments when the demands of running a business felt overwhelming. But they faced these challenges with resilience and a steadfast belief in the values they were building. One evening, after closing up, they sat together in the now quiet restaurant. The golden light from the pendant lamps cast a soft glow on the tables. "We've come so far," James said, his voice tinged with both pride and exhaustion. "But we can't stop here. This is just the first step." Maya nodded, her expression resolute. "We've created something special, but there's more to do. I want to expand our impact, reach more people, show other communities that this is possible." James raised an eyebrow, a small smile playing on his lips. "Thinking about another location already?" Maya laughed lightly. "Not yet, but maybe someday. For now, I just want to make sure what we've started here keeps growing." As they locked up for the night, Maya and James took a moment to reflect. They stood by the entrance, watching the restaurant's glowing sign as the quiet hum of the neighborhood settled around them. "We've created something bigger than us," Maya said softly, "and it's only the beginning." James reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "It's a revolution, Maya. One small step at a time, but it's happening." Inside, Luke was finishing up for the night, humming to himself as he reset the tables. Maya glanced at him and smiled. "Seeing him like this," she said, turning back to James, "it reminds me why we started all of this." James nodded. "Luke's change is just one story. There will be more. What we're doing here, it's not just about a restaurant. It's about showing what's possible." As the golden glow of the evening faded into the night, Maya and James felt the weight of their journey, but also its possibilities. Together, they were ready for whatever lay ahead. Maya and James stood by the window of the pines, gazing out at the softly lit neighborhood. The wet pavement shimmered under the glow of street lights, remnants of a light rain reflecting the tranquil yet vibrant atmosphere. Behind them, the warm hum of conversation filled the restaurant, a blend of laughter, shared stories, and the gentle clinking of dishes. The journey to this moment had been anything but easy, but as they watched customers from all walks of life sharing meals and building connections, they felt a deep sense of pride. This was more than a restaurant. It was a symbol of what could happen when people believed in inclusion, respect, and love. In the kitchen, Luke worked on plating the last orders of the evening. He moved with a quiet confidence that had grown over time, each movement precise yet unhurried. When he saw a table of guests laughing and leaning into their conversation, a small smile touched his lips. He remembered his early days at the Pines, when he had seen customers as transactions, faces that came and went without leaving an impression. Now, everything felt different. He saw the people who walked through the doors as individuals, each bringing their own stories and energy to the space. Maya entered the kitchen, her footsteps soft but purposeful. She paused, watching Luke for a moment before speaking. "Luke, I can see how much you've changed," she said, her voice warm and genuine. Luke looked up, meeting her gaze. Gratitude flickered in his eyes. "Thank you, Maya, for giving me a second chance. I used to think I didn't belong anywhere, but now I feel like I'm part of something bigger. That means more than I can say." Maya smiled, pride evident in her expression. "We all have the ability to change, Luke. The important thing is having the courage to face the past and let it guide us forward." Luke nodded, her words sinking in deeply. For the first time in his life, he felt not just accepted, but truly valued. Maya and James didn't stop at transforming the restaurant. They continued to foster its role as a hub for community connection. Regular events, from cultural nights to storytelling sessions, filled the Pines with life and purpose. One of the most memorable was Community Day, an event where people shared personal stories of struggle and resilience. On this particular day, the dining room was filled with heartfelt words and teary smiles. A middle-aged man stood at the microphone, his voice shaking with emotion. "Growing up, I never thought anyone cared about my story," he said, pausing to steady himself. "But today, standing here, I see that we all carry something worth sharing, and that's what brings us together." Around the room, nods of understanding and applause rippled through the crowd. In moments like these, Maya and James knew they had created more than a restaurant. They had built a space where empathy and connection thrived. Families, friends, and strangers left the Pines feeling less alone, their hearts a little fuller. Late one evening, after the restaurant had emptied, Maya and James sat by the window, their hands wrapped around mugs of tea. The glow of the pendant lights bathed the room in a soft golden hue. "We've come a long way," Maya said, her voice quiet but reflective. I used to think change was impossible, but now I see it's slow, it's hard, but it's real. James reached for her hand, his grip firm yet gentle. We've changed, Maya, but what's more important is that we've helped others change too. That's why all of this, every challenge, every late night, it was worth it. Maya smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. We've created something special here, James, and we're not done yet. As the evening wore on, Maya and James stood by the window, looking into the dining room. Customers lingered at their tables, their laughter and conversations filling the space with warmth. The restaurant had become more than they ever imagined, a beacon of hope and connection. In the corner, Luke chatted with a young couple, his laughter blending with theirs. Maya's gaze lingered on him, her smile soft. Seeing him like this, she said to James, it reminds me why we started all of this. James nodded, his voice steady. Luke's just one story, Maya. There will be more. What we're doing here, it's bigger than us. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the air cool and fresh. The glow of the restaurant's sign spilled onto the pavement, a quiet testament to the change it represented. This isn't just a restaurant, Maya said softly. It's a place where people find belonging, where differences are celebrated, not feared. James squeezed her hand, his voice filled with determination. And this is only the beginning. As they stood together, the future stretched before them, unknown, challenging, and filled with possibilities. In that moment, under the golden light of the pines, they felt the power of what they had created, a message of inclusion, respect, and love, a place where everyone belonged.